Shalom, everyone from Jerusalem. I'm Ron Canner, and we are in the Cardo in Jerusalem. This is kind of like an ancient shopping mall. In fact, below me, these streets go back 2,000 years. And you know what that means? It means that Yeshua, Jesus, walked right through here on the many times that he was in Jerusalem. And that's what I want to talk to you about here on episode 3. In episode 2, and we're discussing why are Jewish people afraid to talk about Yeshua? Well, one of the things that I realized when I first became a believer, it was a big shock to me, is how Jewish this story is. So 3 things happened to me. Number 1, I began to hear from my friend Brian, who led me to faith, about all these prophecies about what the Messiah would look like. Primarily Isaiah 53, that says that he would be rejected, that he would be like a lamb to the slaughter, that he would die with the rich, and he was buried in a rich man's grave, that he would die a sinner's death, he died crucifixion, and that he would see the light of life again, that he would be a guilt offering. In fact, many people, when I read them that passage, they say, stop reading from the New Testament. It's that clear. The second thing that happened is that a friend of mine named Ziva, well, she wasn't a friend yet, but I was told that she was an Israeli who believed in Jesus. Like, I thought I was the only one in the world. And even me, I thought I'm kicked out. I'm separated. I meet her, and the first thing I said to her is, I said, Ziva, I also used to be Jewish. And she took her bony little finger and she put it in my face and she said, don't you ever say you used to be Jewish. You were born Jewish. You will always be Jewish. In fact, she told me there were congregations of Jewish people called Messianic congregations that meet on Shabbat, and they all believe in Jesus, Yeshua. I said, that's crazy. That's nuts. That is not happening. And then I went and visited one. The third thing that happened to me is I began to read the New Covenant. And as I began to read the New Covenant, I found out that I was in for a big shock. Everybody's Jewish. Now, my mom had told me Jesus was a Jew, but somehow I guess I thought Miriam, his mother, was a Catholic. You know, there's a guy in the New Testament, his name's John the Baptist. I was sure he was the first Baptist. And I'm not joking. That's what I thought. Turns out he's a Jewish prophet. There's a guy named Paul who I was told had changed his name, that he had a horrible Jewish name, Saul, before he was a believer. But then when he became a believer in Jesus, he changed it to a nice, beautiful Christian name, Paul. There's only one problem with that. There was no such thing as Christian names back then. Paul, we name people Paul because of Paul. But the fact of the matter is he never changed his name. And the Bible doesn't say that. It says that Saul, who was also called Paul, he had 2 names. You know what? Most Jewish people not born in Israel get 2 names. You get a Hebrew name. His was Saul or Shaul. And you get a name. Mine would be, his was Paul in the Roman world. Mine was Ron. But my Hebrew name is Chaim. So when I moved to Israel, I didn't change my name. My wife wanted me to keep being Ron. And it's a popular Jewish name. But you pronounce it differently. It's Ron. But it is very normal. John Mark. That wasn't his name. He was John and he was Mark. John was his Jewish name. Yochanan. Mark was his Latin or Roman name. James, the brother of Yeshua. That wasn't his name. James is a beautiful name if you're a butler or you're a shofar driving somebody. But James is not a Jewish name. Nobody in first century Israel was called James. His name was Jacob, Yaakov. And the mother of Yeshua, we've already talked about. Her name wasn't Mary and it wasn't Maria. And those are fine names. Those are wonderful names. It just wasn't her name. Her name was Miriam, and that's a Jewish name, just like the sister of Moses. Now, it's interesting that we still call the sister of Moses by her Hebrew name Miriam, but we change Miriam, the mother of the Messiah, we change her name to a more English or Italian-friendly name. Now, all these things happened. I believe it was a conspiracy, a demonic conspiracy, a case of identity theft, where they wanted to change the Jewishness of the gospel to something else. So when Jewish people hear about the gospel today, it's a story of Peter, Paul, and Mary, not Miriam, Shaul, Yochanan, Jacob. These are all Jewish names. And of course, the name of Yeshua. Now listen, I love to worship Yeshua as Jesus, as Jesus, Isa in Arabic. It doesn't matter to me. I love him in every language. But his name here in Israel when he was born was Yeshua. And I'm sure the angel spoke to Joseph in Hebrew because the word Yeshua means something in Hebrew. He said, you will give him the name Yeshua because he will be Yeshua for his people. Yeshua means salvation. You will give him the name Yeshua because he will save his people from their sins. Another thing I discovered, there's a guy named Judas in the Bible. I mean, that's just a horrible name, Judas, because of Judas. But it's actually Yehuda, or Jew. That's where we get the name Jew from, or Judean. And I was blown away to find out that the three most important events of the year 30 CE happened all on Jewish holidays. Yeshua died on Passover. He rose from the dead on the Feast of First Fruits when all the Jews would bring their first fruits offering to the temple. That's why Paul says in 1 Corinthians, he is our first fruits from among the dead. And the followers, the congregation, the ecclesia was birthed not on the day of Pentecost, that's a Greek word that means 50, became known as that, but the Hebrew holiday of Shavuot. The Holy Spirit was poured out on this city, all over this city. There was Jewish revival on the day of Shavuot. It's almost like God was saying to the church that would come later, to all the hundreds and thousands and millions of Gentiles, don't forget your Jewish roots. Join me for episode 4 as we continue to discuss the Jewish aversion to Jesus.